Okay, so these are our goals for today. Again, feel free to add anything into the chat once you have questions that come up, and we'll address them at the end. So I wanted to speak a bit about nutritional research and clinical experience. For our talk tonight, we'll be doing a combination of recommendations that are based on both of these types of knowledge and research. So nutritional research in itself is pretty complex because diet and nutrition is very multifaceted. Additionally, much of the nutritional research is based on subject reports and self-reporting. And so that in itself can lead to some challenges around interpretation. And things are changing quite quickly in the nutritional world in general. So just a note about that, a thing to keep in mind. Clinical experience on an additional perspective can provide a lot of insight into specific strategies, recommendations, eating patterns, and types of food that can support people with ADHD. Some examples are dietary practices that support certain mineral production or mineral, mineral absorption, and different eating patterns. So we're going to be using a combination of these two types of knowledge to make recommendations. And I want to highlight that for many, their clinical experiences can really be, they can be validated and verified by research. And for some, it's just a very bio-individual situation. And so we have to kind of keep those things into consideration. So first, we'll talk about ADHD, gut health, and brain health. And we discussed at the beginning a bit the importance of gut health on brain health and brain functioning, and kind of a newer approach, which is the gut as the second brain. And just to put that into some context for everyone, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that we all have in our bodies. And most of us think of serotonin as it impacts our mental health in our brains, but serotonin was actually discovered in the gut. So many different chemicals and hormones are similar to serotonin, have a high concentration in the gut. So having proper digestion and having gastrointestinal symptoms can have positive or negative impacts on mental health conditions and ADHD and other just general brain functioning. So for ADHD specifically, dopamine, which is the brain's reward chemical, and noradrenaline, which is a fight or flight hormone, are both impacted. And additionally, other chemicals such as gamma-aminobutyric acid, considered GABA for short, it's a mouthful, and serotonin could be impacted as well. And as we discussed a bit, these chemicals are created from precursor molecules that are made in your gut. And they're specifically made by eating certain foods and the gut bacteria that's formed from eating those types of foods. So different species of bacteria, as well as a lack of diversity in gut bacteria or a higher amount of certain bacteria over others, can really influence your brain chemistry. And different foods and eating patterns contribute to that overall gut microbiome health. It's kind of like a broader picture of gut health and ADHD. From a specific hormone perspective, many studies have shown that individuals with ADHD have more of a certain type of gut bacteria that creates phenylalanine. And phenylalanine is a building block necessary for dopamine and noradrenaline synthesis. A 2017 study investigating brain activation in response to rewards reported that ADHD subjects showed less brain activation to being rewarded, which seems to be a very common component of ADHD symptomology, is reward center activation differences. And those subjects also produced more phenylalanine in response. So essentially, the researchers concluded that ADHD subjects had to make more bacteria that produce this compound, phenylalanine, to compensate for how their brains responded to their rewards. So essentially, kind of overproducing this particular compound in relationship to reward center activation or lowered reward center activation. So this is just one example of the ways in which the complexity and the types of gut bacteria can impact your mental health, your ADHD symptoms, and general brain chemicals and brain functioning. And I know that's a lot and very kind of like in the weeds of it, but it's really important to acknowledge and come to an understanding of the importance on digestion and gut health for brain functioning and brain health. It's essentially considered the baseline for the functioning of the rest of your body. So that's a little bit about the specifics around gut health and brain health. Later on, we'll talk about foods that can support brain health and can support the formation of good bacteria in the gut, as well as a balance of helping with the formation of those hormones, those precursors, from a food perspective. So we had talked a bit about different eating patterns and different dietary responses to support ADHD. In general, many of the foods that we will talk about that could potentially worsen or impact ADHD symptoms fall among foods that can often be allergens or sensitivities for folks. So in the nutrition world, in the naturopathic world, and really in functional medicine, which is generally a mix between naturopathic medicine and allopathic or Western medicine, the main approach to most specifically and accurately identify foods that can trigger is called the oligoantigenic diet, or the OD. We're just going to call it that because that is a mouthful. It's also considered an elimination and reintroduction diet. And it's kind of the gold standard for identifying food sensitivities, and it's very much an individual approach to determining that. So there are multiple pathways in which you can have an allergy. You can have a very particular, more anaphylactic style allergy where you have really severe and immediate responses to a food or a substance. And often to get tested for those, you'll go into an allergist and they'll do a skin prick test where they prick your skin with all of these different things to see if you have a response. But there are other pathways with which you can have a food allergy or food sensitivity, and symptoms can be gastrointestinal, they can be skin, they can be brain fog and mental fatigue and other brain processes. So there's many different ways in which specific foods could impact your overall well-being. And this OD, or elimination and reintroduction diet, is kind of the most intensive way to determine what those foods are. So in general, it includes eliminating a list of common allergen foods from your diet for about 4 to 6 weeks. And then one at a time, you slowly reintroduce an item and you track symptoms. Usually wait anywhere between 3 and 7 days after you eat that food to see if you have a response. And then you really track all of that and get a good understanding of your own dietary needs and triggers. And a study has found that for 2/3 of participants who did this OD dietary plan and eliminated the foods that were problematic, they also experienced a reduction of ADHD symptoms. So it is a very intensive process and really does require the help of a nutritional professional. But it is kind of the gold standard and the most accurate way to decide if any of these approaches to elimination would be helpful for you and your symptoms. And the common food allergens that they usually include in this are gluten, dairy, soy, nuts, and artificial colors and flavors. So we'll talk about a couple of groups of food specifically that can negatively impact ADHD. The first would be gluten. So when you're talking about gluten sensitivity, there's kind of kind of two different responses that people can have. Some folks have a genetic disease called celiac, and celiac disease impacts your ability to process the proteins in gluten. And for people with diagnosed celiac disease, gluten can cause many different gastrointestinal and systemic problems and symptoms, and can lead to malnutrition and can be very damaging to your digestion. And then there's also non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which is essentially a sensitivity to gluten that is not a diagnosed celiac disease. That can have other effects that are neurological and behavioral. So more commonly, they're GI symptoms, rash, skin conditions, eczema, brain fog, fatigue, hyperactivity, those types of things. And studies have found that celiac disease is overrepresented in individuals with ADHD. So for people who have ADHD and celiac disease, reducing and eliminating gluten has helped decrease their symptoms. For people who have gluten sensitivity, there are some research studies that showed a reduction in hyperactivity for some individuals when they eliminated gluten from their diet. So again, this is another kind of eating protocol that's very bio-individual, and this recommendation is a combination of some basis in research and some basis in clinical experience. So for each person, it's going to be very different. The next category of foods that can often impact ADHD symptoms is dairy. The main protein in dairy is called casein, and there are two types of casein, A1 and A2. Some studies have shown that A1 casein can impact GI inflammation, can slow thinking, and can impact information processing, all things that can be pretty impactful for ADHD. And we've also talked about how GI inflammation in general has a major impact on mental health and brain functioning. So again, the research on this is mixed and somewhat limited, and most of the research on these dietary guidelines, elimination diets in particular, are done on children. So there's some interpretation that needs to happen there. But many clinicians will recommend trying out limiting dairy consumption or focusing on eating dairy products that contain only A2 casein. And here in Seattle, where we have 1 million food shopping options, there are actually a lot of options for milk and different dairy products that are A2 focused. And then sheep and goat milk also tends to be higher in A2 casein. And then an additional type of food practice that you can have that is generally just better for overall nutrition and health is avoiding food colorings, additives, and sugar. One of the original dietary approaches to managing ADHD is Feingold diet or Few Foods diet, which eliminates all food coloring and additives. And has some research basis to show a positive impact, and again, mostly in children. So in general, avoiding these things is good for general health, as well as avoiding processed food overall. And sugar intake can also have an impact on ADHD and functioning. So that's kind of the less pleasant part of talking about food changes for ADHD support is discussing the things that you might wish to limit to support and minimize symptoms. And now we'll talk a bit about foods that can support ADHD. So in general, the Mediterranean eating pattern or the Mediterranean diet, from an overall nutritional perspective, has been shown to be really effective to reduce inflammation and for overall general health. Specifically for ADHD and depression, this eating pattern has a lot of research basis for success. So the Mediterranean eating pattern essentially includes these components: 3 to 9 servings of locally grown fruits and vegetables per day. It's high in minimally processed foods, so beans, nuts, and whole grains. Um, Only high quality fats, olive oil, some eggs, and high quality fish, and then limited sugar, red meat, and dairy intake. And this eating pattern, there are so many resources and options for cookbooks and recipes online. Um, this eating pattern is also just very effective for heart health, for overall weight management, and for supporting just general nutrition. Other foods can specifically support ADHD, and foods or food practices that can support ADHD are eating a breakfast high in protein. Because many medications that are used to treat ADHD can suppress appetite, creating some sort of ritual around making sure that you have breakfast each morning can really impact your cognitive performance, your focus, your energy levels, aside from the benefits you get from a nutritional perspective on having a healthy breakfast to fuel you for your day. Making sure that you include plenty of protein is really important for structure of your cells, muscle growth, brain health, and just general overall health and nutrition. And including protein and some high quality fats like olive oil, avocados, nuts, all of those things will help you maintain focus during the day and increased energy. So eating a breakfast high in protein is another really great strategy. Caffeine has been shown to have some positive impact on ADHD, especially around attention and memory, and specifically with tea. Again, for adults. And as always with caffeine, making sure that you're not getting more than 400 milligrams a day, which is a lot. So for each individual, that's going to require a lot of personal preference and fine tuning to make sure that you're getting the benefit from caffeinated beverages without the drawbacks of jitteriness or any of those other impacts of too much caffeine. Some other foods to support ADHD are polyphenols. So they're a natural antioxidant that can help alleviate oxidative stress in the brain. Berries, cherries, eggplant, onions, kale, coffee, and green tea are all great sources. And again, this is another way that you can both support minimizing oxidative stress, but also support healthy gut microbiome. Other dietary micronutrients, zinc has been shown to be deficient in many people with ADHD and can increase zinc deficiency can increase hyperactivity. If you are looking to increase your zinc intake, there are foods that you can eat that can help with that. However, there are also supplements, and I would highly recommend talking with your doctor or nutrition professional before adding any supplements to your diet. And that also goes for micronutrients that can impact ADHD. So children with ADHD often have lower levels of iron and magnesium. Consuming vitamin C, potassium, vitamin B, and nuts can also increase cognitive performance. So we've talked about gut health and brain health and the connection there. We've discussed foods that can potentially negatively impact ADHD, and we've talked about some specific foods and eating patterns that can support ADHD. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about some specific planning type strategies that can support overall health, specifically for folks who have ADHD and also have complex lives, work, family, job. Most people could really benefit from these strategies, but specifically for folks with ADHD, making sure that you have access to nutritious food and easy to prepare meals can be very helpful. So meal planning in general is a wonderful strategy that can help you really take your food choices and utilize meals to support your health and ADHD. So usually for meal planning, there's many ways that you can do it. Many people will choose a day per week, say on a Sunday before the week begins, pull out their calendar, look at what they're doing throughout the week, and plan meals accordingly. When you're doing more specific meal planning, you can shop and potentially prep some of these ingredients ahead of time so that you have easier access to it, and preparation on the day of that meal is easier and happens more quickly. You can do this just with your calendar and a pad of paper, or there are many websites that are available that can help you fine tune this process. So Real Plans is one website where it has a calendar setting. You can actually pick specific dietary restrictions. You can say, I want gluten-free meals, I want Mediterranean eating pattern meals, and they have some built-in recipes, and you can also import recipes yourself. You can add meals and recipes to the calendar, and it will automatically create shopping lists and recipes and steps to create those meals. So that also includes a schedule that says the day before you're cooking a meal to take the chicken out of the freezer so that it's thawed and ready to go. And that those types of services can be super helpful and help it feel less overwhelming and daunting. And they're very easy to access, and most of them are free. So that's a really great strategy to help. Batch cooking is another eating strategy that can be extremely helpful. So batch cooking is essentially combined with meal planning, helps you have access to nutrition food really quickly on the day that you're cooking. So essentially, you'll pick a day of the week, you will do your meal planning, you'll do your shopping, and then you will prepare as many components of each meal ahead of time as possible, so that on the day of the meal you're cooking, say you're meal planning on a Sunday and batch cooking on a Sunday, and you're going to batch cook a taco night. You'll often prepare the meat. So if you have meat that needs dicing or marinating, you'll do that. You'll usually wait until the night of cooking to actually cook it. You'll prepare all the produce, so you'll dice everything, all the herbs. You'll prepare sauces. You may prepare grains ahead of time so that it's ready. You might prepare a big batch of rice in your rice cooker. And then on the evening of that meal, all you have to do is cook your meat or your protein, put it all together, and it's ready in 10 or 15 minutes. Another component of batch cooking is that you often will cook a larger amount of food than you need for that meal, so that you have meals for lunches, or so that you can have leftovers for other dinners. So that can be really helpful in that if you're on your own, or you're a family of 3 and you cook a recipe for 4 to 6 people, everybody has a lunch the next day. Everybody has a dinner on one night where you just don't have it in you to cook. So it can be a very helpful strategy. And often another component of batch cooking is that there's kind of staple meals that you make varieties of. So some examples include bowls. So a bowl, there's a million different varieties. Some people call them Buddha bowls, salad bowls. There's lots of varieties. You can have a base grain like rice or quinoa, or a base root veggie like roasted potatoes, a protein, various vegetables, and different sauce. And so you can really adjust each week and have a different kind of bowl every week and have variety, and it's very easy. There are other kind of basic staple types of meals that people use for batch cooking. Wraps or tacos, a baked potato or baked sweet potato bar, pizzas. There's a lot of different options for that. So batch cooking can be a really quick and easy way to make sure that you have both dinners and lunches available. And then separate from the actual food prep and types of food that you are consuming and making for yourself throughout the week, a really important strategy for overall digestive health, which we've discussed really impacts mental health, is mindful eating. So essentially your body has kind of two main ways of being in the world. There's a spectrum between the two, but there's two kind of basic modes of operation. Fight or flight, which is essentially your sympathetic nervous system responding and reacting to things in your environment, and rest and digest. And rest and digest is essentially your parasympathetic nervous system that can be calm enough and focused enough to allow you to digest your food. And the way that we operate in the world, if our bodies are in fight or flight, the fight or flight response and our sympathetic nervous system will overpower our ability to rest and digest. So if you are eating in a state of stress, if you're eating in a state of distraction, your digestion will be impacted. So some strategies to think about when trying to get your body into a parasympathetic state so that rest and digest can happen are things like preparing to eat. So taking 3 deep breaths before you eat your meal, making sure that you could do a gratitude practice, or for some people like prayer, if that's part of your belief system or part of your practice. You could just slow down for a minute, take a few deep breaths, get your body into a parasympathetic state. Other strategies include making sure that you're eating while you're seated, minimizing distractions, so trying not to eat in front of the television, trying not to eat while you're standing up, making lunches or cooking or cleaning up or working or driving if possible. And again, all of these things are doing the best you can with the time that you have. Chewing your food fully. So essentially that means it's the texture of oatmeal when you're done before you swallow it. And the reason you do this is because your mouth and the glands in your mouth and your saliva include enzymes. And the more you chew your food, the more those enzymes are able to interact with the food and help you break down certain types of foods. So if you're not chewing your food fully, those enzymes don't have a chance to work on that food and help you digest it. Putting your fork down between bites is another strategy that can be really helpful to slow down your eating, so you're not just shoveling food in the 5 minutes that you can. There are some other strategies in general, drinking water before or after a meal, but not with if you can. Drinking water with lemon. There's some other strategies that can be more specific to support your digestion. But in general, healthy digestion, healthy GI, gastrointestinal health, really does have an impact on overall health, as well as your blood sugar regulation and energy and sleep, and your overall nervous system function. And here's a slide of some resources if you're interested to look into some of the research that I utilized for this talk. The top resource, This Is Your Brain on Food, is really fascinating. This woman is a psychiatrist, a trained chef, and a naturopathic doctor. And she discusses very specific mental health conditions and really specific food approaches to support those conditions. So it's a really fascinating book if that's something that's interesting to you. And this slide is my contact information. I do one-on-one nutritional therapy, so think of it as a nutrition and wellness coach. I also do a lot of family nutritional education, so I'll often meet with parents and kids and give them information about general healthy nutrition and healthy eating choices, as well as basics of physiology, eating habits, how to adjust when you go eat takeout to make it the most appropriate from a nutritional standpoint, those types of topics, meal planning, and then other nutritional support services. So you can feel free to reach me at my email, visit my website, or reach me by phone. And then I also had some other questions to pose to the group and see if any of these were interesting for us for our discussion. So I wanted to really quickly look in the chat. Oh, thanks so much, Jessica, for sharing those links. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to answer questions. And then I would really love to know if any of these questions are interesting to you and if you have thoughts or concerns about that.
I wonder if we could pop one question at a time into the chat so we can go back into gallery view, and then people can just unmute and put their cameras back on.
That sounds lovely. Okay, so I'm going to stop this.
Okay, so for those of you who are comfortable turning your camera on, it's always lovely to see faces, and it's always nice to feel like you're being heard for our presenter. So if you have the opportunity, we'd love it to see your face. And if you can't, that's okay, we understand. So first of all, thank you so much for your time, Jenny. That was really informative. And so now we get to ask some questions. So anything that you were holding on to while you were listening, or any of the questions that she popped up that might have made you think of something where you're like, oh, I want to know a little bit more about that. Now would be a great time. So just unmute yourself and jump in. I'm okay with it being quiet. You okay with it being quiet, Beth? I'll just wait. Someone's going to feel uncomfortable.
Once I get started talking, it's hard to make me stop. So this is me letting somebody else talk.
And I'll go ahead and actually pose just the first question.
Mm-hmm.
That showed up very strangely. Can you actually see that in the chat? I don't think so. Okay, let's try that again.
What nutritional strengths are you interested in trying out after this discussion?
Yeah, what nutritional strategies are you interested in? I'm going to type that
strategies.
in.
Eye test didn't even work.
That was very weird.
I'll go really quickly.
What do you have questions about?
Yeah. In terms of just answering your question, I know you know this about me, but I'm still very interested in trying out just like the elimination diet, because I already have lactose intolerance and inflammation from other stuff in my life. So I'm curious what it would be like if that part of my physiology was like in better shape, so to speak, and what impact that might have on the rest of my functioning. So it was a good reminder.
Yeah, I think that it's become really, really clear over time that if you're eating foods that you have some level of sensitivity to, even if it's pretty minor, the overall inflammatory response in your body can impact more than you think it can. And it can operate under the surface in ways that you don't understand. And it can be things as simple as always getting a patch of eczema on your skin, or having brain fog, or having chronic fatigue. Not chronic fatigue, the actual diagnosis, but just long-term fatigue. And so another part of this equation when it's around different food sensitivities is that once you have spent a lot of time eating foods that you might have a sensitivity to, you are potentially subjected to or at higher risk of getting something called leaky gut, which is essentially when your gut wall, your intestinal wall becomes more permeable, meaning that substances can leach through your intestines, food can leach through your intestines, different proteins that cause an inflammatory response. They're not supposed to be there. And so when that happens, the overall health of your GI is disturbed, is impacted, and it can lead to all kinds of other symptoms. So that's why I always, even though it can be a pretty intensive and tedious exercise to do an elimination diet. I've done it for myself probably 3 times in my life. Once you do that and you have an idea of what things are triggering foods, it doesn't mean that you will always never be able to eat those foods. I think that's another common misconception that makes people feel really hesitant to try. Essentially, if you do an elimination diet and you find that you can't eat red kidney beans and broccoli and eggs and gluten, and you eliminate all those foods for, a couple of months, and then you add one back, you might find that you can eat them again because your inflammation and inflammatory response is low enough that you can have those foods sometimes. So it's not just a cut or dry, I can never have dairy again. I can never have beans again. For some people, there are substances that are like that. But usually if it's a food sensitivity, there's some flexibility once you've healed your gut. So that's just a thing to think about when you're considering if something like an elimination diet or challenge would be helpful for you.
Oh, okay. Thanks for sharing, Jane. She said she's interested in making some of the food suggestions that you recommended as supportive for her son. And she was wondering, Jane, just to clarify, are you asking if there are ideas to help trick our kids into eating the food that might help? Yeah. I know I have a couple sets of parents here today. So that was actually one of my questions. So I'll wrap, Jane, if it's okay, your question with that. One of the components that I think a lot of us struggle with, and our kids definitely struggle with, and all of us as just human beings struggle with, is it's so easy to just grab the wrong food, especially for kiddos. So do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how adults and parents can support nutrition in their own lives or in their children's lives in regards to the quick snack versus mindful eating? So.
For sure, yeah. So when it comes to trying to increase variety, so a little bit about me, I have a son on the autism spectrum. He is extremely picky. There's probably 20 foods that he will voluntarily eat. And so we have done a lot of work around kind of behavioral strategies and honestly some incentivization around trying new foods and trying variety. We have a chart where we write the new things that he started and he gets a point for it, and that leads to a reward. So that's a little bit more of a behavioral approach to variety. And in general, there's a couple of different models to help support increasing variety in diet. And one of the really common ones, specifically for kids, but definitely could work for adults as well, is essentially the idea that it will take many, many exposures to a new food to decide that maybe you like it. And even a small amount of a food that is not preferable will have an impact, as long as you are also providing foods that they like on their plate. So kind of especially in educational nutrition fields, an approach would be you have your dinner plate and it's got 4 things that your child loves and 1 or 2 small amounts of things that your child is trying. And you can incentivize that in different ways if that's helpful. It depends on what your approach is to parenting. If that's a thing where we always try a bite of something new, and that's a requirement, or if there are other practices that you use to help with that. But those are kind of main approaches. A plate that always has something that they will like, at least a couple of things that they like, and a new thing to try or a challenging food for them they don't love. And then like continuous exposures. And there is an awareness that taste buds change in kids pretty drastically from the time they're young until they're older. So picky eating can be very challenging, and that's just my thoughts from a kid perspective. Oh, thanks so much, Erin. Thanks for coming. When it comes to making good choices about snacks and quick foods, one of the main ones is really access. So having less access to foods that are not necessarily the healthiest choice is can be a really hard thing to begin, but can be really beneficial. So one thing that I recommend for folks is have cut fruit and veggies just like available. Like prep a Tupperware that's got cut carrots and snap peas and bell pepper and like whatever veggies your kid will enjoy or that you will enjoy. I mean, this strategy works for everybody. And the same with fruit. If you do some of the strategies like batch cooking or meal planning, you'll probably have an extra container of quinoa or an extra serving or two of soup. That's more for like meals, but if we're talking about snacks, you can also really be a little more choosy about the ingredient list of your snacks, right? So there's kind of the general, like, avoid hydrogenated oils, partially hydrogenated oils, seed oils. Try and avoid things that are highly processed. And all of this is very much do the best you can. There is no food that is inherently bad. There are foods that, if eaten too much, will not contribute to overall health and nutrition. But everybody occasionally really likes some Cheetos. And that's just kind of the reality. And so a thing to keep in mind is nobody benefits from being so highly restrictive that you're not also enjoying your food. And then one other thing I'll say about healthy choices and having those available, a really great overall tip for nutrition for snacking is no lonely carbs. So if you're going to eat carbs, have some fat and or protein with it. So if you're going to have crackers, have some cheese, have some, turkey. If you're going to have an apple, have it with almond butter or peanut butter or cheddar cheese. Try and combine carbs with some sort of preferably protein and or healthy fat. And that's just a really easy way to make sure that when you are eating, you're getting nutrient density in what you eat. So those are kind of no lonely carbs. It's such an easy and great rule. And once you internalize it, you go to grab a handful of tortilla chips. What are you going to do? Oh, no lonely carbs. Okay, I'm going to dip these in some hummus. I'm going to eat a handful of nuts. Like, it doesn't even have to be a food that you prepare. Having things like bins of different types of nuts available if you tolerate nuts, or if your child will eat nuts, nut butters, hummus, all of those are like really great snack options.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
I actually want to like really quick get more people. I haven't heard too many voices. So I am always worried we're going to run out of time, but we are. Jenny did great and we are perfectly on time. So I actually want to know if you could introduce yourself for a second. Again, we can see your name, but you can say your name, where you're at, and then what made you come to this meeting? What did you hope you were going to get out of it? So I'll go ahead and Jessica, is it okay if I start with you? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
It's okay. You just might have to remind me all the things I need to cover. I'm Jessica Mrazek. I live in Mount Lake Terrace. I have a 6-year-old who has ADHD. And as soon as I saw the topic, I was like, you know what? I got to clear the plate tonight and just make sure I make it to this meeting because he's incredibly picky when it comes to eating. So it kind of sounds like I'm on the right track based on the notes that I took. But I do need to be better about like sneaking in, well, not necessarily sneaking in, but adding that broccoli, for example, to his plate every night, along with the things I know he's going to eat, whether or not he actually tries it, and just keep trying. We've gotten kind of bad about just being like, oh, well, we've got the list of 30 things he'll eat and that's it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here. And maybe we can have other people chime in on their own picky eating experiences, and we can sort of brainstorm some other ways. My
Yeah.
son can sometimes be in the same boat. We kind of do what Jenny was saying, and we just slide it on in there and celebrate tremendously whenever he eats it. We actually have always said the phrase, like, we're just gonna set it right here, because he'd freak out if it was even on his plate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it, don't even put it there. So we're like, we're just gonna casually set it here for you to like think about eating, maybe. And that over time really helped. Okay, Paige, would you mind just introducing yourself, because some of us are strangers still, and then where you're at and what you're hoping to get out of tonight?
Yeah, totally. I'm Paige. I live in Lower Queen Anne. I have ADHD along with most of the household I grew up in, so brothers, family, so on. I was really excited to attend this because I've definitely been thinking about seeing a nutritionist or dietitian for quite a while. I feel like, I definitely, well before I was diagnosed, was like ADHD. I've been having like GI issues, go to the standard, go to your PCP and they hand you the FODMAPs list and you're like, what the hell do I do with this? Pardon my French. Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting. I know just having like looked into it in the past, how much the inflammation of the gut can really impact, those psychological, your brain and so on. Sorry, I'm a little tired today. But yeah, no, it's just really interesting. And I'm glad that you were here to share all of this with us.
Thank you, Paige. Yeah, Jenny did a great job covering gut inflammation. So that was really good information for us to have. Deborah, I'm going to call on you and remind me what your puppy's name is.
There we go. His name's Scout.
Oh, okay.
Scout, yes. So my husband just left because we need to go pick up my daughter. So I'm here because we see Jessica. My son is newly diagnosed with ADHD, and my favorite. Oh, and I'm Deborah, and I live in Bothell. And the favorite takeaway tonight was definitely the no lonely carbs, because it's so easy for them to just have crackers. They eat a whole box of crackers if you let them. It's like their favorite thing: cracker, a chip, pretzels, and or we used to say that those things are vehicles. So it's a vehicle and you put hummus on it, or you put peanut butter on it, or you put your guacamole on it. But they don't always, want them touching. So the carbs are very limited.
That whole food touching thing brings back memories. Yeah.
Yes. But I also like the reminder of having things ready and in the fridge. Like if I ever buy pre-cut fruits, my son always will grab them because they're just right there. They're front and center. It's a clear container. He can see them and he will automatically take those out of the fridge. It doesn't, if the strawberries are in the drawer, there's no way the strawberries will ever be eaten. It has to be right at his level. So I love the reminder. If I just put everything on that eye level shelf and have it ideally prepared, even like the strawberries already cored, he will always choose those because they're easy and he likes fruit. But the whole thing, even with fruit, is just carbs, right? So you still need a protein or a fat. And with this whole new cycle of trying out medication, he has to eat something substantial enough in order for him to take that medication on with it. So that's been the tricky part. Getting him to actually eat something with substance before we do that.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down, just like eating getting our kids to eat when they're not hungry on the medication and eat the right things is really hard. I will say that reminds me, and Jenny, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this. There was a recent article that I came across that ADHD brains actually don't metabolize glucose as well as neurotypical or non-ADHD brains, I guess. Because what's really typical? I don't know. And so you actually have an increased craving for carbs. So that's just like physiologically, it could be part of your experience of living with ADHD. Now, obviously, like there are over 200 genes that are involved in it, so it might not be your flavor and what happens, but for a lot of people, that can be one of the outcomes. I don't know if you're familiar, Jenny, with any of that, but
So I'm a little bit.
I understand glucose metabolism in the brain, but I know that you need glucose for the brain to function. So
You too. Yeah. I don't know about that specific topic, but what I will say is that that really does tie into the connection with your gut health as well, right? Because if you have problems with processing glucose and you're craving carbs and you're eating carbs mostly, then you are also creating and feeding specific types of gut bacteria that will impact your digestion and your overall health. So, that makes a lot of sense to me. I did want to speak to Deborah and Jessica around, and everybody around the lonely carb thing, and specifically about the fact that like eating a strawberry is a different carb than eating a cracker, which we all know, right? Like that's very clear. But strawberries have all kinds of micronutrients in it that you're not going to get in a cracker, right? They have all kinds of vitamins and minerals. So that in itself is a better choice than a cracker. However, the other thing I wanted to speak to was the difference between the carb, the chip, the cracker, the lovely crunchy thing that we all want as a vehicle for something else, especially for kids who don't want their food touching. I'm very familiar with this. And this is where things like a handful of nuts or like some grass-fed beef sticks, you get the chomps at Costco. They're like, or beef jerky, turkey jerky, smoked salmon on top of a cucumber. Like there's a lot of different, that's not separating it, but there's a lot of different protein options you can choose that don't have to touch the carb. And what I can do is I actually made, so one of the things that I specialized in with clients is creating healthy snacks for super picky kids. So I actually have a couple of print resources that I can share with Jessica, if that works, that are lists of healthy, high protein, healthy fat snacks for kids. So I'm happy to share that with you, and maybe you can send that out to participants.
yeah, that's a great idea. We will definitely follow up. We'll post it in our family and group chats. And if you're not there, if you registered, then we can send it out to all of the people who participated this evening, because you put your email in when you signed in. So if that's okay, we will follow up with people who came tonight, and a couple of you I know, so I can just chase you down. But do make sure that you signed in it, or at least we have your email, or you maybe just direct message Beth that you'd like to get those, that list that Jenny is offering to share with us, which would be great. Okay, Jane, would you mind introducing yourself and where you're at and what you're hoping to get from tonight?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jane. I'm in West Seattle, and so I have a 16-and-a-half-year-old. No, sorry, he's 15-and-a-half. Oof. Son, that's my cat. So she's just walked across. And my son was diagnosed with ADHD last year. So I've been just I've learned about this organization. So this is my first meeting. So I just wanted to kind of tap into the nutrition part of it, because he's at a point now where for the first time, he's been like at the 43 percentile for growth, and he's usually been 80. And I think part of that's to do with the medication. But suddenly he's just grown, I think, 4 inches in the past 2 months or something. So it's always a constant battle for me to try and keep him fed with enough calories to offset his medication, and then also make sure that, you know, he eats at home, because now Seattle Public Schools, sorry, she's a needy cat as well. They, you know, he has the bus, he can ride the bus system for free, so he's become a lot more mobile and is out there a little bit more. So I just was interested in seeing how I could tweak his diet a little bit more, and this has given me some really good ideas to, like, even just making bowls and wraps and things, because I'm sort of my husband and I are sort of a I won't say meat, but we're sort of a chicken and fish and a couple of vegetable type person, and he needs something a little bit more interesting, I think. So I'm really excited to try out other things.
I feel like we could open this up. Oh, I'm sorry, Jane.
Oh, no, that's all. My throat's a little bit froggy because I work remotely, so I don't talk to anyone all day, and all of a sudden I have to talk. My throat's kind of
I understand. I imagine there's some of us in the room right now that take medication that suppresses our appetite and have experience with that, right? So do you want to share like what you do, since you're on the adult end and you're kind of more aware of it than our teens? And then Deborah, I know Evan is on medication as well. Does he have, maybe if you have any ways that you're getting him to eat food? So it sounds like Paige and Deborah, maybe you guys have some ideas.
I know when I started, I saw that it was going to be a problem, and I didn't have a lot of information. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And so I would do what I called gut loading with like a piece of bread, gluten-free bread, slather butter on it and put cheese on it, right? And I was doing that because I knew that I needed some calories, but it wasn't the right thing to be doing, but it tasted good. And it kind of got me through to a point to where I could start talking to people. I haven't worked with anybody like Jenny before, but you know, with my ADHD providers, and they said, you know, something like that is perfectly good in a pinch. You just can't make a lifetime out of it. You can't start doing that. And so a lot of the things that were helpful, like, and it's still habits that I still have today. Here I am at my desk. I've been sitting here working at this, you know, desk for years, but now I always have, these are a bag of Costco shelled pistachios, and they don't go stale and they don't need to be shelled. I also buy the shelled ones, and the shelled ones are out on the countertop, and there's a little bowl next to them, and people like to stand there and shell them. It's something to do, right? It's you. Anyway, I've never been a trail mix person, but sometimes I'll throw like craisins or something in there, or, you know, Trader Joe's has some craisins that aren't rolled in sugar. Or any of those dried fruits. And like, it might've been that I would sit down and I would eat a whole bunch before I was on meds. Now I'm just putting these in. Like if I see them, I will just put one in. I won't necessarily eat more than one, but it's good protein. It's good. It's something that's good. I do know that raising my first set of kids and then raising stepkids and now being an empty nester, I've learned that all of the bad habits and the things that as parents, when you're a parent, you're doing all of these kind of circus tricks to make people interested. And it turns out that those circus tricks are really important when you live by yourself too, because as soon as you're not taking care of somebody else, all of the bad habits that your children have, you have too. It's just that you're not doing it for them. And so for instance, I had a big bag of carrots from Costco. I have a crinkle cutter. I used to do this for my kids. The texture for them, they loved it. Not all of their friends loved the texture, like, ew, crinkled carrots, that's weird. But just like the pistachios, the bowl of crinkled carrots was always on the countertop because they don't go bad. They don't, you know, Jenny probably knows whether or not germs will grow on them. I don't know. But that mindless eating gets taken care of with things like the pistachios and the carrots and stuff if they're just out. But I don't know who said it. If you put the fruit in the drawer in the refrigerator, I don't see it and it will rot. But the minute it's in a cleared thing that I can see it, then I will eat it. And it's already sliced, then I eat it. Oh,
And
one other thing for picky eaters. I learned this with my stepkids. In that family, they had a rule, and we would put a sign up on the refrigerator. Each kid could have 3 things that month that they hated, that they would not eat, and we would not make them eat. We would not make them try it. There was like complete safety from mushrooms, broccoli, whatever. And if they wanted to change it the next month, they could, but it gave them a little bit of control, and they knew that even with the other stuff, it might be on their plate, and they at least, if they found that they tasted it and they didn't like it, it could go on to the next month's list. I don't know. They were pretty young. We started that when they were like 4 and 6. Young enough to where they wouldn't say no.
Those are really great strategies. And I think it also really speaks to all the comments so far about like having things accessible and in your visual field, right? Mm-hmm. Having bowls of stuff at your desk or at your counter that are healthy options is like a basic strategy to make sure that you have access to those, because what you see is what you will use. Mm-hmm. And even to bring that even further, like one of the things that I've started implementing is the foods that are the ones that I want the people in my household to have the most exposure to are the ones that are most visual in the fridge. And the ones that I actually want them to eat less are the ones that go in the drawer. So like you put like, I don't know, for us, it's like sauces. We use sauces, right? Everybody uses sauces, but you don't need to see those right away to know that those are a healthy choice. And that's not exposure, right? It's like not right in front of your face.
It's true.
So all of these are like really great ways to have those things like in your visual field. You see it, you'll use it.
Yeah, my son, same. We have an above even me reach for all the really good snacks, like the chips and the sweets and stuff. He's gotten taller and we do have a step stool, but he still doesn't see it as often. And so he has a very ground level snack box, and it has nuts and seaweed and like fruit bars and things that we're totally okay with him eating. And so he just goes in and reaches for one, and we're like, it's a pack of seaweed, and it's like, great. Yep. That's 0 calories, but at least it's green. So good job. And we have some like veggie sticks that we don't mind getting from like Trader Joe's that he can have access to, but it says the word vegetable, and it's vegetable colored. So we're very intentional about even the snacks look kind of vegetable-ish sometimes. Like we obviously have Cheetos and popcorn and stuff, but like we work in a lot of the like, oh, it says it's kind of green and orange. How is that? So he doesn't feel immediately on guard about colors, at least. So yeah, the reach one has actually really been helpful, because he's like super into that empowerment of like, I'm going to get a snack. So he'll go do it. Yeah, Deborah, I know I put you on the spot, but you have, similar to Jane, you have a teenager. He's taking medication, and he was actually just sick recently from not eating enough. So any tricks or tips you've tried?
But honestly, not quite yet. We've needed to reduce the dose, and it's still just, it's just been tricky to get him to, he's wanted to move, taking the meds from the morning time when it's just near impossible for him to eat until the afternoon. It's not a stimulant, so we can move it to the afternoon. But then he gets home from school, and if I'm there and I can like have something almost like pre-warmed up and he can smell it when he walks in the door, he's more apt to eat it. Otherwise, and then if I'm not here, he's going to go grab that bag of chips that we use like for his lunches, right? He's going to start eating that, or he'll bust open his lunchbox and see what didn't I eat in here, and he'll grab that, or he'll just grab the bowl of cantaloupe or something out of the fridge, which is fine. But just the cantaloupe or just the chips, he needs some fat and protein in order for that pill to go down and not cause him such GI upset. So we're really still new at it because it's just been a couple of months. So I feel like we don't really have a good system in place quite yet, but we're still working at it. Yeah, like even today, he's like, I don't feel like eating yet. I'm like, okay. So how about in a little bit? Yeah, we'll do it in 30 minutes. 30 minutes goes by. And I'm like, I'm going to make you a piece of frittata. He's like, I don't want that. And I'm like, and I shouldn't have asked, because if I had just warmed it up and like just had it ready, he probably would have eaten it, you know? So that's what it ended up being later today. I'm like, Raphael, go warm up that chicken in the microwave, get it, because I had already pre-cooked for a couple days, and then he ate it. So it's, I think, more because he's a teen and he doesn't want any work or involvement in the food at all. He just wants to grab it and eat it. I feel like I just need to be a little more proactive with kind of having it ready and it smells good, and like, how could you not want to eat it?
Is there a thing where if you ask, hey, would you like blah, 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 versus, hey, this is here, go do that. Is there something is that still a thing? Because I learned that if I ever ask my kids, hey, would you like to? No.
Yeah, we don't do that either.
Right.
Yeah,
And if I ever heard somebody else say, hey, would you like to come in for dinner? And they're like, I don't want to. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
Right.
it's always, hey, we're going to eat now, or hey, I made this for you, or hey, I'm going to have you eat this and then you're going to take your pill. You know, it's more like that, or it's more like, hey, I have this or this. Which one sounds best? You know,
do you want to do this now or in 5 minutes?
Yeah, so it's not like a yes, no. It's you have to pick a choice. Yeah, you know, we're at that spot with everything. Yeah.
Richard, I feel like we left you hanging. So we can keep talking about all of this, but I don't want to leave Richard out. So if you're still there and wouldn't mind sharing where you're at and introducing yourself and what you're hoping to get out of this evening, we just want to make sure that everyone had their questions addressed.
Unfortunately, I'm just an adult with ADHD, so.
Unfortunately, you're just an adult.
Problems taking pills.
I'm there with you, Richard. Just you and me.
And that kind of stuff. So, no, I wanted to just kind of like get involved. I can't remember, was it either Jessica or Beth I saw at, or someone else that I saw was running by. She introduced herself as the new Seattle chapter person. Anyways, so I just kind of want to check out and just kind of like find out what's being done for CHADD. So.
No, that's perfectly a legit reason. Well, welcome, Richard. And I think if you're talking about a chat on Facebook or something, then you would have been talking with me. But I'm glad that whoever you spoke to or whatever sparked your interest.
Yeah, it was a Verify site, so
yeah.
But that doesn't seem to ring a bell with anyone here. So okay. Anyways, just happy to hear and absorbing information. That's all. So.
Okay. No, perfect. Thank you. All right. Does anyone have any, this is sort of our conversation piece. There's not a ton of us. You can take yourself off mute. So just, we can have a conversation. Jenny's still here for a little bit longer. We got 4 more minutes with her. So if you have any burning questions that have popped up, I will be quiet. I am so enjoying watching you guys try to avoid eye contact and the silence. I was like, usually someone breaks by this point and has to like say something, but I guess we're just gonna sit here quietly. Okay, Richard, go ahead.
I was going to say, so Dr. Barkley says that when we are in task-oriented mode instead of default mode network, where the brain is literally eating up twice as much glucose, what would be suggested for adding a slight amount of sucrose throughout the day?
Did you catch that, Jenny?
In order to be able to keep the brain operating, because it's burning twice as much sucrose.
That's really well said. I've heard that, but I could never have repeated it like that. Jenny, how would we do that? What are some, I mean, I think you might have covered some of this, but are there some easy hacks for that?
I think that if you're just pretty choosy about what sources of sucrose you're utilizing, so, you know, fruit is obviously going to be a really great choice. Again, I would recommend sticking with the no lonely carbs idea, just because it's going to keep fueling the rest of your body, even if what you're looking for is specifically sugar. But I don't really have a great suggestion if what you're looking for is like any of those. You know, I know some people do like the workout gels and like those types of things.
Sure.
I don't really have suggestions for those.
I think it's just some lemon juice and water, but I didn't think lemon juice had any calories in it, so.
Lemon juice and water doesn't really have calories in it. No, I mean, that's generally can be pretty good for, that can be pretty good for digestion in general.
Neat idea.
But if,
Yeah, I'm talking more just for a slow drip of sucrose in, you know, because with ADHD brains, when we're engaged on tasks, our brains are literally working twice as hard
yeah, for sure.
to be able to keep out all the noise and concentrate on whatever task we need to. So.
Yeah, and I think Beth's suggestion of, you know, when you used to, Beth, occasionally add, you know, like some dried cranberries that aren't coated in sugar, or like a fruit leather, or those types of snacks that are a little bit less on the processed side, a little bit more on the just using fruit as your
Trader
source.
Joe's just has better ones that are cheaper too. I've found it's hard to, like the ones you find at Fred Meyer, or even sometimes at PCC, they're weird.
Yeah, they're different. You know, the other really great option for this too, if you can tolerate them, is the pouches that are like just applesauce, or just like fruit and vegetable pouches, because they're non-perishable, so you could have it like right at your desk. And if you feel like
are the jars of applesauce like at Costco that says no sugar added?
Yeah.
For the most, yeah, that can be a little tricksy, but for the most part,
They seem pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, apples. So there is a thing that is now less regulated, which is there's a certain amount of processing you can do to fruit that is considered fruit juice instead of just pure sugar. So so often when it says no sugar added and it's been processed, it can actually have apple or grape that's been so highly processed, it's just literally pure sugar, but they can call it fruit. So that being said, like if you're getting a no sugar added applesauce, there will be fruit sugar in it, and that's a better option than getting one that's been sweetened. So you know, you kind of have to pick your battles with that.
Okay.
And reading labels and stuff is generally pretty important in that as well, because sugar has a million different names, and is put in so many things that you wouldn't think it is. But for your question, Richard, like things like fruits, applesauce pouches, fruit leather, dried fruit, especially if you can add it with some nuts or have some sort of protein with it, those are all be pretty good options.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, these are all really good questions, and we're at the top of the hour, so or the end of the, I don't know, beginning of the hour. It's late. My brain's like it's 8 when I just say that. So I just want to remind you guys, our speaker series is only the first week, so we have an hour and a half to give people time to ask questions of our speakers. Moving forward, obviously, second, third, and fourth meetings of the month are more traditional support groups, and we just spend 1 hour, so you're not stuck through all of your evening. But we want to give the speakers enough time to present, and we want to give you guys enough time to ask all those great questions. So thank you so much, Jenny. It was a pleasure having you here this evening. It was really great to learn all that information. And thank you to all of the new faces that came tonight. I feel like it's a different mix every time, huh, Beth? We actually have like 300 members and like 10 people drop in at a time.
Every time it's
like
new
which 10?
people
Which 10 are we going to get tonight? Yeah. So-
Paige and gosh, where'd she go? I forget. The other one that was here earlier.
Jessica.
Your repeat. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Jenny, that was a fantastic presentation, and it's so great to get to meet everybody. We're going to be, I didn't get it into the newsletter this week. I got tired and forgot. We're going to be at the Rainbow Hop at on Finney Ridge Rainbow Hop on Saturday. I think it's 10 to 3. Jessica has a table for her company, and she's letting Seattle CHADD hang out there with her. So if you're around, you can do that. We talked about the barbecue on Sunday. So, you know, we go for many months without anything in person, and now all of a sudden there's 2 in 1 weekend. So anybody that's able to come, it'd be fun to see you in person.
Yeah, the Rainbow Hop is great for kids. There are activities at all of our tables. So mine is doing self-love notes.
Nice. And then if you are interested in getting into the online chat support groups, just email me at seattle@chadd.org, and I will give you the instruction sheet and help you get in there. It's just like any other app, one more app. But once you are in there, then, you know, you can feel free to pop in any questions you have, or just, you know, look through any of the questions that have already been asked and answered.
Yeah, and invite anybody you know who's interested. We're pretty great. So
And if you came in through Meetup, email me your email address so that you can get the meeting information as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, guys, and a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.